Hey folks, this is Chad Conway coming with you this afternoon on early fall 2021. We're going to be talking about home backyard composting today. We did this series last year. Those that participated will receive fill out a short survey, can receive a lawn bag, which a leaf bag that will be given out to the participants that fill out the short survey at the end of this. And this video will be available on Facebook and also on our website. So you can click on the link to fill out the survey from there. Again, I'm Chad Conway at the Knott County Extension Office, Agricultural Natural Resource Agent. This PowerPoint was we used last year's, laid out very well, got a lot of good information in it. It comes to us from our another land grant university up in New York, Cornell University, and Gene Von Hottel put this together for us and gave us permission to use it. So we'll be talking about just the basics of composting, give you an ideal starting place to begin backyard composting. We also have available to, with that kit you'll be picking up, your lawn bag that you'll be getting, we'll give you some more information, some publications that UK has resources on backyard composting as well. But wanted to get this recorded in early fall, that way you can start thinking about composting around your home. Composting is a great way for us to reduce and reuse and recycle a lot of materials that we use in our kitchens, in our homes, in our backyards. All the leaves that we'll be raking up from trees this fall, those brown materials are our leaves, and we'll talk more about those, and sawdust that we can use to help compost with, and paper products and things as well. But we do have a lot of waste from our kitchens, a lot of food waste that can be used to compost with, and if it's done properly, we won't have any smell. We will have very limited problems with rodents or anything like that in the backyard if you're looking at composting around the home. I love teaching about recycling and reducing and reusing products. If you look at this pie chart that's laid out here, we can reuse almost 90% or better of what we use in our homes on a daily basis. We can recycle those items, we can reuse those items, we can compost those items. So there's a lot of ways to reduce the amount of garbage that we're throwing into our landfills each day. And with that, composting is one way we can reuse those items, and we're making up some very good nutrients rich soils that we can use in our gardens at home, in our flower beds, and different things with composting. But as you can tell, we throw a lot away, especially seems like in our area. So if we can look at ways to recycle, we all have access to recycling centers, recycling trailers in our communities. So if you want, that's a great way to help out our environment. And also composting is another way we can help our environment too. Composting is just basically converting plant materials, kitchen scraps, garden waste, leaves, grass clippings, a lot of different things, paper products into, like I said, a nutrients rich based soil type that can be soil media that can be used in your gardens. When we look at what we can compost and how to begin, we're looking at all kinds of different stuff. We usually break this down into green products, as you can tell, and brown products, as it's highlighted with the green and brown colors of the different composted materials. Food waste, of course, is usually a green product that we can add to our compost piles and bins. Leaf and yard waste is the browns that's needed to help start breaking down those organisms and materials. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation today. Forgot to mention earlier, manure is key. It helps build up that heat source and is really good about helping break down and start the process into turning these waste materials into usable nutrient soil media. So talking about how it works basically and how we get this started. We start with those brown and green materials, as I mentioned. We put those in a pile. We like to have some type of containment area. We'll talk more about those, whether it be wire containers, whether it be a block structure, whether it be a manufactured compost bin, anything like that, that can work. And as this starts to break down, there's a heating process that's very key to this. And then we start seeing those organisms begin to further break down this material. So it's kind of a long process, but again, it is a cheap way of getting nutrients into your plants around your homes. Talking about the organisms that help break down in those compost bins, we've got all kinds of different things, from the roly-poly sow bugs to ants to, of course, worms, centipedes, millipedes, protozoas, bacteria, snails, all kinds of organisms live in this to help break those materials down and to start turning it into compost. Like we said, what makes it work? It's the micro and macro organisms, and this helps. And keep these happy, we have to have a few things. One of those is the food source, and it takes the green and brown materials for those to start working together to keep those organisms happy. And they need some type of structure, shelter area that they feel safe in, that begins to break down those materials, whether it be a bin like we were talking about, some type of compost area that they feel protected and can use. And then also we have to have moisture. Now, usually here we don't have to worry about wetting these a whole lot early on to get that first initial start, especially if we're looking at a lot of leaf material that's usually dry, and we may need to wet those compost piles, and that will help begin that organism process, especially in the fall when it can be dry outside. But most of the time we see enough moisture here in the mountains that that these can keep continuing to break down and further break down once the moisture gets in those compost bins. And then as it decomposes, we're going to see mushrooms and other fungi begin to grow in these, which is also healthy for the decaying process. This is wood chips here. As you can tell, we've got some mushrooms growing in those, and that definitely is important to help hold that moisture and the sign of moisture, and is helping break down that process and decay those materials. Sawdust, wood chips are key too, as as you layer these. Something to think about when you begin these. Feel free to give me a call anytime here at the office, or get in contact with us through Facebook or email or website, something like that, when you start to have questions about if you're doing this composting the correct way. So we talked about it takes all kinds of micro and macro organisms. Again, all these, or some of them microscopic, some of them are vertebrates, most of them, a lot of them are invertebrates. So there's a lot of different organisms that help break down this material in those compost bins. Again, some of them, like I said, that you can't even see unless under a microscope. Then we talked about the mushrooms and fungi, how they help break down the some of the materials as well. Are bacteria and inoculants required for composting? No, most of the time we can do this by, like I said, making sure that we have the right amount of the browns material and the green materials to start that heat process, and the moisture to begin the composting. Earthworms are key. They're going to come with the right amount of moisture, and again, they do a great job into breaking down that leaf materials, those maybe mulches, straw, whatever that you may be using to in your compost bins. So basically, these organisms and decomposers start breaking this material down by feeding on it, and there's several of them that, like we mentioned before, especially the earthworms, the sow bugs, and snails that really tend to start working pretty early on and begin breaking that down into compost. Pretty good slide, an important one here, what you got to have, and of course, one that I hadn't mentioned yet was the oxygen that's needed. Of course, we will talk a little bit more about stirring this material, and the heat that's needed and the water that's needed. Of course, the heat comes naturally with the right amount of greens and brown materials to start that process. Just a basic composting bin here, made out of wire, that you can pick up at most of your hardware stores. We've also got some really good, if you fill out the survey and pick up or pack it, or we can email that to you. There's some really good resources about building compost bin and how to get those started. But again, these can get pretty hot, especially in the middle of them, and they can smoke in the morning. You'll see some, not as much smoke, but steam coming off of them, and they can reach temperatures up to 140 degrees. Talks here about stirring those compost bins, mixing those up. How often do we do that? Every couple of weeks is what I suggest, and definitely you're going to see those start to turn into compost, and that material your compost pile will get smaller. Once you have some, it breaks down to a certain degree, you can take that out and put it in a different area. And when you do that, it'll become readily to use quicker. And then you can start another pile of the browns and green materials to start breaking down. The green materials usually are a nitrogen source, and that really is a key to breaking those materials down. The nitrogen in them gives that heat that you need, and the ammonia helps break it down even more. The carbon, which is usually your brown materials, are more dense, and they help with the heat as well, and can help break those down. So the key to this is you need your brown materials, your leaves, your straw, your sawdust, your mulches, whatever that may be, paper, and also your green materials, which can be your leaf clippings or kitchen waste, such as vegetables a lot of times. And I'm not an advocate of putting much meat waste in these. They tend to can cause some smells sometimes, and also can tend to cause rodents more around your homes. And this slide just talks about the breakdown and maybe how you want to look at mixing some of these. You do not have to use manures. You can always use a sawdust material as well, and to help break those down. But or you can use, and this doesn't mention it here, but I'm sure the next slide will. But This talks more about a lot of your, this is what we considered your green materials, such as food waste. Corn stalks can be used as well. I recommend chopping those up pretty finely to get those started in a compost bin. Straw and barks and papers, sawdust, anything like that. Like I just mentioned about the corn stalks, your surface area, you know, when you're talking about your browns, you know, they can be kind of larger at times, but the smaller that we can get those, the quicker they're going to start breaking down. This talks a little bit about the moisture content. You know, we want to see that moisture content pretty high, especially in the beginning to start the decomposition stage of it, and to get the organisms to start producing and working that material. Yeah, if you wonder how much moisture we're looking at here, we should be able to take our hands and squeeze some water out of that compost. If we can't squeeze any water, it's probably too dry, but we don't want it when you pick it up. When you pick that material up, we don't want it so wet that it just is just water pouring out of it. You should be able to squeeze it and get water, but again, more water is probably better than less water. These can put off some odors and strong smells and methane, so be careful about letting kids around these, or when you're looking at getting that oxygen into them with a you know, potato fork or whatever you may use, rake or anything. Just be aware that gases can build up, and it could be it's probably a safety factor to use some type of mask to keep some of those gases from getting you. The different types of compost bins, like I said, we have a publication here at the extension office that UK provides us that is really a well written publication that can help with these. But you know, we can start these in several different ways, using pallets, using blocks, using wire, whatever that may be, to help decompose and for a compost bin. We talked about the heating process. We're going to see those. We would like to see those temperatures get to 90 to 140 degrees. You can use a thermometer of some type to check those temperatures. That helps kill the weeds and the seeds that may be in those. So and then it helps with the decomposing and breakdown process as well. So very easily to see temperatures of 120 to 140 degrees in your compost bins. Now, we don't want to get these too large, which most people want in their backyards, but we do need them big enough to start the heat process. And again, if you can have some type of containment area, you're going to be more successful getting the heat and your materials start breaking down quicker in a smaller area. So it's very difficult on a small scale to just lay them out in an open area and expect them to start breaking down properly. So I would suggest building some type of compost bin or buying one of the manufactured compost bins. So what creates the heat in the compost bins? You know, sun definitely does that. Of course, we don't want to see any fire. No, basically the heat comes from the materials, the nitrogen source, the bacterias, the microbes, those type of things help with that heat source. And like I said, there's a lot of different materials that can be composted. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about not using meat products in these as well. or dairy products. Some of these items, some of your leaves are pretty acidic, so we can see some acidity problems with this. If you're concerned with that, once your compost is finished and before using it, we can send off a small sample of that to UK and get a soil analysis, and that'll give you a determination of what the pH levels is, and then what the other nutrient levels could be, your phosphorus, potassium, those items. You know, a lot of people leave their lawn clippings on the yard, a lot do not. That's a personal decision in my opinion, but if you do remove those, let's take advantage of them and reuse those as a compost material in your flower beds or your backyard garden. They are high in nitrogen, which is again a very helpful resource in breaking those materials down. We do have to worry about folks that treat their lawns with a lot of chemicals. These take a long time to decompose, but not too many of us use a whole lot of chemicals in our lawns. But if you do, let's talk about that and give some recommendations on how to use those clippings if you're using a lot of fertilizers, not as much fertilizers, but chemical control for crabgrasses and that type of thing in your lawn. Food scraps, we talked about those. Dairy meat products should not be composted. Attracts too many rodents and pests. Wood ashes, not recommended as compost as well, although some people use them and it turns out okay. Again, that may be when we want to look at a soil test, because ash contains as a high number of potash, so we can run into some difficulties with the potassium level if you use these in your garden. When we talk about livestock manures, whether you're going to be using these on your garden or in a compost bin, manures are very high in nitrogen and a good resource for nutrients for composting in your gardens. But make sure that, especially when we're using these in the garden, they need to set for 90 days. We don't want to put those on green, so we don't want to use fresh manure. And also we want to be careful with usually our two manure sources that we recommend are either from horse manure or from cattle manures. Coarse materials, as I mentioned before, they can be too big and bulky to break down. So we're going to, if you want these to break down quickly and get to use those in a reasonable amount of time, 6 months to a year, they need to be shredded pretty finely. You know, big chunks are not going to break down for several years. As we talked about composting systems, we have several options available. We want to keep those, like I said, in a small area. So a 3-foot container is usually a perfect size for backyard. We have several different options, as you can see here in the picture to your far right. We've got the wire bins, the concrete cylinder or concrete blocks, wooden bins, and here's a 3-tier system that we can put green materials, brown materials, and get those started, and then mix them as we need them. And then some of these I've seen a 4th bin with the finished product as well, ready to use in your garden, composted material. Other options are the rotating bins. I think we've got a slide or two on those. This one here, I think UK's got a couple of demonstrations of these that I can get a hold of for you. You can do a single can composter or a 2-can system or 3 cans even, like I said, to keep your food in one, your brown materials in one, and one to mix those materials in. This one's one of the wire basket styles, maybe a 3x3 or 4x4 size. And then here's one of the pallet bins, as I was talking about earlier. And then here we are showing an example of moving these from bin to bin, turning these, getting the oxygen level into these as needed with a pitchfork or some kind of rake or shovels or what you have available to stir those up and get the oxygen into these to help break them down quicker. And like I said, we're looking at doing that every couple of weeks. This system here's got, looks like they've used some pallets and then some extra boards that slide in and out as you use them. Also, I've seen some that they pull the boards out and remove the compost from the bottom, or you can take the boards out and get to your compost that way. This one's a homemade rotating drum. Got a video that UK has done one or two of these, and again, the rotating drums do okay if you have the right amount of the brown materials, the leaves, the sawdust, or anything that you may want to add to these. A lot of places that some of your institutions, whether it be schools or maybe a community center, have these senior citizen center, but a lot of times we end up getting a lot of food scraps in these, and all they do is smell. They produce a lot of water. They get stopped up, and you have to be really careful about making sure you turn these properly, and they can be a little more of a headache with breaking down the materials. And here's a couple that of the rotating drums that you can buy from garden supply stores or online. Like I said, just read the reviews and look into those a little closer, and make sure it's something that you're willing to spend a little more time with than the traditional bins that are on the ground. This is just basically saying that you can bury some foods and decompose them that way, but usually animals or dogs dig these up if we're just throwing scraps into a pile. So not a very easy recommended way of doing things. Using the compost, which is the best part of this whole process besides us reducing the landfill waste. Recycling and reusing this and having some good products for your gardens, for your flower beds is key to this. And it definitely, I have some more information I can share with you about how to use compost as well. If you wanted to look at screening your compost, you can do that if it's not breaking down fast enough and you want some to use. This is basically showing a screen that you can separate the broke down materials out of and start using it a little bit quicker with some type of wire to get your usable compost and reuse the larger materials back into your compost bin. Again, we're talking about, we can use a lot of mulches too around our gardens. That's key, and those will break down eventually as well. We do have to worry about how acidic some of those sawdusts and mulches can be, but they help with weed control. And if you got a lot of this available, take advantage of it in some way. Like we talked about before, the benefits of using compost, it helps with water retention, adds organic matter to your soils. And it also, whenever you get your plants are healthy and your plants are getting the right amount of nutrients they need, we see a lot healthier plants. So when that happens, we're reducing the disease problem to our plants. So basically on to end here, just if you're interested in composting, feel free to give us a call and contact us here at the extension office. Again, fill out the short survey on our website or the Facebook link, and you'll be eligible for the one of the lawn leaf bags that we'll be giving out. And as also, we can send out the resources on building compost bins to you as well, through email or hard copy through the mail. Anything you have any questions about as far as our lawn care, gardening, landscaping, anything like that you may think of, feel free to give me a call here at the extension office anytime, or look us up on our Facebook site or our website, and we'll be glad to help you in any way. Insect problems that you may see over the winter, feel free to let us know about those too. We're here to help with any agricultural natural resources needs anytime. Again, I'm Chad Conway, Agricultural Natural Resource Agent here at the Knott County Extension Office. If you would like to reach us, you can give us a call at 606-785-5329. Thank you.